For people are stepping out of a car in the middle of the night, carrying a large bag. At the same spot, Yoon-hee, who is always shy, stands in front of the store, trying to gather the courage to buy pads. As Yoon-hee leaves the store, she is surprised to see the 4 young men walking behind her. They are talking about some news that will fill the papers tomorrow and how they will be stuck here for 3 months. One of them then says, "Matilda is heavy for the bag." Yoon-hee assumes they are criminals who have just killed a girl. She panics, stumbles, and falls, dropping the pads in the process. One of the young men grabs Yoon-hee to check if she's okay, but she panics and runs home in terror. Later, her brother Kwang-soo walks into her room and tells her to get ready because their mother is planning to rent out Chen's grandfather's house to some young men. Yoon-hee blushes and smiles shyly, but Kwang-soo mocks her, saying, "You fool, Mom said they're handsome, so they won't care about an ugly girl like you." Annoyed, Yoon-hee throws him out of the room. The next morning, Yoon-hee's mother forces her to wake up quickly, saying she can't stay in bed any longer. Yoon-hee starts browsing the internet, trying to find any news about a girl named Matilda being murdered, but she finds nothing. Instead, she stumbles upon news about Suho, a member of EXO, being injured and that their upcoming concerts have been cancelled. She thinks to herself, "This will definitely be sad news for my friend Gone." During breakfast, Yoon-hee's mother hands her the key to the house and asks her to give it to the new tenants. Excited, Yoon-hee starts picking out nice clothes to wear for meeting the young men. However, when she sees them, she's shocked to find that they're nothing like the handsome description her mother gave. Disappointed, Yoon-hee remembers how, since high school, she's never been able to get a boyfriend because she's always too shy to talk in front of any guy. She sits down to watch TV and catches the latest interview with EXO. Her brother Kwang-soo looks out the window and asks, "Are these the guys you said weren't handsome?" Yoon-hee replies, "Yes." Kwang-soo glances at the TV and says, "Do you think those guys are handsome?" Yoon-hee nods. "Of course." Kwang-soo smirks. "Well, they look exactly like those 2 guys." Yoon-hee insists, "That's impossible." At that moment, their mother walks in and says, "Take these sweets to the new neighbors." Yoon-hee tries to refuse, but her mother insists she go. Reluctantly, Yoon-hee sneaks into the house using her key. Unable to resist the smell of the food, she opens the container and takes a bite. Unfortunately, the food gets stuck in her throat, and she rushes to the fridge to grab some water. That's when she freezes. Standing in front of her are 4 members of EXO. Yoon-hee can't believe her eyes and ends up spitting the water right in Chanyeol's face, leaving everyone in shock. In a flashback, we learn that the 4 young men are the same ones Yoon-hee saw the previous night. They had come to stay at Chanyeol's grandfather's house. The 3 friends join Chanyeol inside and admire the renovations his father made to the house. That night, all 4 of them fall asleep on the couch and floor, waiting for the beds to arrive tomorrow. Chanyeol starts rummaging through his grandfather's old belongings. The next morning, the 4 friends are awakened by a commotion in the kitchen. They peek out to see a strange girl eating food and drinking water straight from the fridge. The 4 of them rush toward her, only for Yoon-hee to spit water in Chanyeol's face. While the others check on Chanyeol, Yoon-hee turns bright red with embarrassment and quickly leaves as Chanyeol yells after her. Yoon-hee runs to her brother Kwang-soo, asking, "Do you know who rented the house?" Kwang-soo casually replies, "It's those guys you said weren't handsome." Shocked, Yoon-hee dashes to call her friend Gone, exclaiming, "You won't believe this. Members of EXO rented the house across the street." Gone laughs and teases her, "Your imagination is getting worse," but Yoon-hee yells, "I'm telling you, it's EXO." Hearing the seriousness in her voice, Gone drops whatever she's holding and rushes to Yoon-hee's house. Yoon-hee grabs a pair of binoculars and starts spying on the young men. Soon, Gone arrives with her own binoculars, and the 2 begin watching together. As they gush over how handsome the guys are, Yoon-hee suddenly remembers spitting water in Chanyeol's face and scolds herself, saying she's so stupid. Despite her embarrassment, they continue spying and admiring the guys. Yoon-hee's mother walks in and says, "It's getting late, Gone. Your parents will worry, you should head home." Gone reluctantly leaves, though she clearly wanted to stay longer. After Gone is gone, Yoon-hee asks her mother, "Why do you care so much about the new neighbors? You didn't even agree to rent out Grandpa Chin's house before." Her mother grows tense and replies, "Don't meddle in things that don't concern you." Meanwhile, the EXO members are chatting with their friend Kai. Si-hoon notices something and points out, "That girl is watching us." Baek-in reassures him, "She's harmless," but then suggests, with a sly grin, "Let's mess with her a little." Daeo refuses to join in on the prank. Chanyeol notices what his friends are doing and tells them to stop. Daeo then closes the curtain, waving at Yoon-hee in the process, letting her know they were aware she was spying on them. Embarrassed, Yoon-hee quickly ducks away. Daeo turns to Chanyeol and asks, Why did you bring us to your grandfather's house? Chanyeol opens the curtain again, locking eyes with Yoon-hee and says, I lost something valuable here, and I need to get it back. Yoon-hee, terrified and clueless about what he's talking about, rushes to her bed, imagining him storming into her house to take revenge for spying on them. Over breakfast, Baekhyun asks, do you think that girl will report us living here? Daeo replies, if she were going to, we wouldn't be eating breakfast in peace right now. Chanyeol adds, I told the manager to send someone to clean the house. At that moment, Yoon-hee's mother interrupts her thoughts, saying, listen, you need to go clean the young men's house and come back quickly. Don't bother any of them while you're there. At first, Yoon-hee objects, but her mother insists, explaining that the manager needs someone trustworthy and there's no one else she can rely on. Yoon-hee protests, saying, one of them waved at me with a sly smile, and the other gave me a killer glare. But, as usual, her mother forces her, threatening, if you don't listen, I'll rent out your room. She then hands Yoon-hee the key and warns her, don't go near the master bedroom in the house, no matter what. Yoon-hee calls Gon over, and together they prepare. Gon teaches Yoon-hee how to clean with precision, even bringing her cleaning supplies branded with the band's logos and pictures. Meanwhile, Si-hoon is walking down the street when he runs into Kwang-soo. Si-hoon asks him for directions to a coffee shop, but Kwang-soo instead takes him to his tent and makes him a handmade coffee. Impressed by the taste, Si-hoon smiles and says, from now on we're friends. Yoon-hee begins cleaning the house, unable to believe where she is. She picks up their belongings, smelling them and hugging them like a fangirl. But then she remembers her mother's warning not to enter a certain room. Her curiosity gets the best of her when she sees their masks hanging nearby. Realizing they're the same people she saw the other night, she becomes convinced they've killed someone and hidden the body in that room. Nervously, Yoon-hee sneaks into the forbidden room. Inside, she finds musical instruments and a guitar with the name Matilda written on it. Suddenly, she spots a cockroach. In her panic to catch it, she ends up destroying everything in the room. At that moment, Chanyeol, the room's owner, walks in. Seeing the mess, he yells at her furiously. Overwhelmed with guilt and fear, Yoon-hee bursts into tears and runs out of the house, leaving everyone puzzled. Daeo follows her, putting his jacket around her shoulders and doing his best to comfort her. Daeo looks at Yoon-hee's face, which has turned an unnatural shade of red, and asks, are you running a fever? Just then, Chanyeol arrives to bring her the phone she left in his room. However, when he sees Daeo comforting Yoon-hee, a sense of discomfort washes over him. Chanyeol retreats to his room, his mind drifting back to the days when their band was hugely successful. As he sits there, the pendant his grandfather gave him falls from his neck and shatters. Chanyeol remembers how his grandfather used to tell him that the pendant brought good luck, and he starts to believe it. Just after the pendant breaks, Chanyeol receives the news of his grandfather's death. He recalls how his grandfather loved music and taught Chanyeol to share that passion. The old man had given him the pendant, saying that as long as he wore it, it would bring him good luck, and asked him never to take it off. Chanyeol had once asked his grandfather, Grandpa, won't the bad luck ever catch up to you? His grandfather replied with a smile, I have another one. After the pendant breaks, bad luck starts to follow. Their new song gets leaked. Suho injures his foot. It's then that Chanyeol comes to the house, hoping to find the other pendant to restore the good luck to the group. Suddenly, Yoon-hee's phone rings. It's her trying to call from Kwang-soo's phone, but then she remembers she left her phone in Chanyeol's room. Chanyeol begins browsing through Yoon-hee's photos and videos and comes across a message from Gon asking how the cleaning at EXO's house went and telling Yoon-hee not to hide anything from her. Chanyeol responds by telling Gon to respect other people's privacy. Gon, however, snaps back at him. Chanyeol then tells her to have the phone's owner come to collect it. When Gon tells Yoon-hee, Yoon-hee starts screaming and asks Gon to come with her. But Gon refuses, saying she doesn't want to ruin her reputation in front of her favorite band. Yoon-hee is forced to go when she sees their truck leaving the house. She sneaks into Chanyeol's room quietly, only to find him standing in front of her in a bathrobe. Chanyeol tells her, I admire your boldness, coming here on your own. Before she can leave, Chanyeol grabs her arm and asks, do you really not know who I am? The next day, Yoon-hee wakes up to find herself running a fever. Meanwhile, at the boys' house, Chanyeol watches her room, which hasn't opened yet, feeling uneasy. He wonders to himself why she hasn't come yet. Daeo responds, maybe she doesn't want to come because of the way you yelled at her, though he's also concerned about her. Si-hoon notices their tension and reassures them, saying, don't worry, it's not too late yet. Baekhyun chimes in, I'll call her, but I don't have her number. Si-hoon decides, then I'll go talk to her brother Kwang-soo. He's my friend now. Si-hoon heads to Kwang-soo's tent and finds him talking like a man in his 30s, avoiding eye contact. Si-hoon asks about Yoon-hee, and Kwang-soo tells him, she has a really bad fever. Si-hoon responds, why are you talking to me like that? Do you think you're an old man? Kwang-soo tells him not to speak or ask about his sister again, adding, anyway, she doesn't like you guys. She calls you all ugly. Si-hoon runs back to his friends, saying, the girl has a fever, and it seems to be affecting her. She even called us ugly. Meanwhile, Yoon-hee remembers her conversation with Chanyeol when he asked her if she truly didn't know who he was. She responds, of course I know. You're Chanyeol, a member of EXO. Chanyeol's face darkens, and Yoon-hee adds, you're the one responsible for the powerful fire attack, right? Chanyeol finally speaks, take your phone and leave. Yoon-hee doesn't understand what Chanyeol wanted to tell her. At that moment, Chanyeol starts preparing a cold remedy for Yoon-hee. Meanwhile, Daeo remembers Yoon-hee gently crying, telling him that she wasn't really sick, but her face turned red because she was embarrassed. Daeo stops by a roadside stall, buys a hot drink, and gives it to Kwang-soo to take to Yoon-hee. Yoon-hee reads the message Daeo wrote, wishing her a speedy recovery and saying he hopes to see her again. Determined to improve her image in front of them, Yoon-hee decides to go back to the house and clean Chanyeol's room. Chanyeol notices her return and comments, so you're back. Your health seems to have improved. Yoon-hee doesn't respond, afraid her cheeks might flush. Before she leaves, Chanyeol grabs her arm, saying, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have shouted at you that much. I won't bother you again. Then he leaves the room. Yoon-hee, feeling frustrated, says, I'm the one who should apologize. I wanted to show you that I'm not as stupid as you think. I'm just an ordinary girl who gets a little shy sometimes. She adds, even he didn't care to ask my name. Just as Yoon-hee is about to finish her sentence, Chanyeol enters the room and says, I know your name. Your name is Yoon-hee. Yoon-hee is surprised because no one had asked her name before. Daeo explains that he already knew her name since she's now working for them. Chanyeol apologizes once more and tells her to continue her work. Yoon-hee returns home in a state of disbelief, and just then, she receives a message from Chanyeol asking her to come early the next day because they'll be getting to know her better. Yoon-hee is shocked and fears that they'll hold an interview with her and start asking her questions, making her feel nervous. Meanwhile, a group of girls walk past Kwang-soo, asking if EXO really lives in the house. Kwang-soo, who doesn't know who EXO is, doesn't respond, and the girls leave. Kwang-soo rushes to look up EXO and learns that each member has a superpower, like water and fire. He mistakenly believes this is true, unaware that it's just the band's concept. Back at Yoon-hee's place, she practices answering interview questions, feeling extremely tense and not knowing what to do. Kwang-soo barges into the room wearing a helmet and asks Yoon-hee, did you know our neighbors are EXO? Yoon-hee responds that she already knew, and Kwang-soo warns her that they are dangerous and have superpowers. Yoon-hee thinks her brother is joking and doesn't realize he truly believes it. He hands her the helmet, telling her to be careful when dealing with them. When Yoon-hee arrives at their house wearing the helmet, the boys burst into laughter. Baekhyun asks, are you crazy? We already know you. Chanyeol adds, where were you born? Si-hoon comments that it's a silly question. Yoon-hee replies, I was born in a small village. Chanyeol says, then we'll call you village girl. Yoon-hee doesn't like the nickname, but the rest of the members seem to enjoy it. As Yoon-hee continues cleaning, she notices Daeo sleeping and takes out her phone to take a picture of him. But then she remembers when he told her not to take photos of any of them because they want to feel like normal people. She hesitates and decides not to take the photo. Si-hoon asks her to deal with any cockroaches she sees because he's terrified of them. Baekhyun warns her to be careful when ironing their clothes because they are expensive and important. While Chanyeol tells Yoon-hee not to come in without permission because they're often not in a good mood, Yoon-hee sits with Gaon and tells her that she's happy, even though she's become a servant to the band. She also says, they've entrusted me with their secrets. I won't be able to tell you everything from now on. And don't you dare leak anything about them online. Meanwhile, Chanyeol is trying to compose a new song with Baekhyun, but he's struggling. Baekhyun encourages him, saying, don't worry, it's not just the loss of the necklace that's the problem. The next day, Yoon-hee runs into the boy she had a crush on back in high school. Before he can talk to her, she feels embarrassed and falls silent. The boy says, you haven't changed. You're still looking at the ground and not speaking. Overcome with shyness and sadness, Yoon-hee starts crying. Just then, the boys arrive, and Chanyeol says, who are you, and why did you make Yoon-hee cry? The boy replies, I'm her classmate from school, right? Finally, Yoon-hee speaks and explains that he's just a classmate and was only saying hi. Daeo orders the boy to leave, and he runs off quickly. Yoon-hee rushes to Gaon, telling her, I can't believe it. The four of them defended me in front of my classmate, but Gaon doesn't believe her. Baekhyun says to the others, I think that boy is her ex-boyfriend. Chanyeol and Daeo both look displeased. Meanwhile, Gon tells Yoonhee, listen, he knew you used to chase after him. But now, he'll probably call you since you're surrounded by 4 handsome guys. Yoonhee believes Gon's words and spends the rest of her day waiting for her classmate to call. Meanwhile, Siyun is with Kwang-soo in his tent after asking Yoonhee about Kwang-soo's age, and she tells him that he's in high school. Siyun tells him to stop acting like an old man in front of him. He knows Kwang-soo's real age. Kwang-soo responds by saying he's been hiding his supernatural power. Before Siyun can answer, Kwang-soo asks him not to harm his sister. Siyun laughs at his words and asks if Yoonhee's classmate was her ex-boyfriend. Kwang-soo denies it, but in reality he was her first love. Siyun tells the others, and Chanyeol feels uneasy and jealous. He watches Yoonhee as she cleans and asks, what are you thinking about? Is he your first love? Yoonhee ignores his question and heads to Daeo's room, where Baekhyun tells her that Daeo has a shooting for a drama and needs her help with rehearsing the scenes with his co-star, the girl. He starts reading the script as if she were reading a newspaper. Daeo, fully immersed in his role, tells her to look into his eyes and confess his love for her. Yoonhee feels embarrassed and apologizes for leaving the scene. Hyun laughs at her while Daeo feels upset because she left. Yoonhee goes to search for her phone but finds it in Chanyeol's hands, and he has hung up on her classmate. She tries to take the phone back, but Chanyeol ignores her request. She quickly apologizes and asks for the phone. Chanyeol ignores her words and asks, is this boy really your first love? Yoonhee returns home and watches TV. She finds an old interview of Chanyeol, where he is smiling and laughing. She thinks to herself, he was always so happy and cheerful. What happened this year that turned him into this angry, serious person? Soon after, Yoonhee receives a call from Chanyeol asking her to come clean the house again. When Yoonhee returns, she talks to Gon, who asks if her classmate has called. Yoonhee tells her no, because she can't tell her the truth. Gon reassures her, saying, don't worry, he'll definitely call. Convince yourself that you're beautiful and that guys like you, even EXO. And whatever you do, don't call him. Let him call you first. Kwang-soo overhears their conversation and goes back to the tent where he finds Siyun. He tells him that his sister has a crush on someone in the group. Siyun asks, who does she think it is? Could it be me? But Kwang-soo replies, no, it's someone she really wants to call. Siyun goes back to the others and tells them that Yoonhee has a crush on one of them. Chanyeol smiles, saying, that was bound to happen. She's always around us. But Siyun sarcastically replies, no, she's interested in a guy she hasn't met before. Don't forget, we still have 6 members missing. It's actually Kai she likes. Chanyeol is shocked by this revelation. Then they hear a knock on the door. They think it's Yoonhee, but they are shocked to find that Kai has returned from his trip. The next day, the group goes for a shoot and checks on Suho's foot. Baekhyun tells Chanyeol, while looking at Kai, look how tall and handsome he is. She's right to like him. Chanyeol's anger rises, and he tells him to be quiet. Then Baekhyun says to everyone, a very sweet girl has joined us. Her name is Village Girl, and she's the one cleaning our house. One of the members asks, is she beautiful? Baekhyun replies, I haven't really paid attention to her looks. Chanyeol walks into the room and Baekhyun asks him, is Yoonhee beautiful? Chanyeol gets nervous, especially when his friends insist that he invite Yoonhee. He firmly tells them, no, I won't bring her here. But Siyun mischievously asks Chanyeol, why do you get so nervous every time we talk about her? His friends tease Daeo, forcing him to call Yoonhee. Yoonhee arrives, holding Chanyeol's music notebook. She can't believe her eyes when she sees the rest of the group welcoming her. She stands there, looking at Chanyeol, who is posing for a photo. Kai walks up from behind her and asks, you're the village girl, right? He then takes her outside to sit, while Chanyeol watches them with jealousy. After a while, Daeo arrives and asks Yoonhee, what brought you here in this crowd? She tells him that Chanyeol asked for his music notebook. Daeo takes it from her to give it to Chanyeol and asks her to leave. That evening, Chanyeol is disturbed by the thought that Yoonhee might really like Kai. He dreams of his grandfather, who scolds him for losing her twice. Chanyeol, thinking his grandfather is referring to the necklace, says, it broke, not lost, but his grandfather replies, no, it's lost, and you need to get it back. She's very close to you, but you can't see her. Chanyeol wakes up suddenly, confused about what his grandfather meant. He heads to make coffee but is shocked to find Kai and Yoonhee talking together. Then, Kai grabs a moisturizer from the fridge and tells Yoonhee, I've brought this cream for you. Apply some on your hands so it doesn't hurt from all the work. He looks at Chanyeol and notices his angry gaze. Chanyeol leaves to search for the necklace in the garden but finds nothing. He lies on the ground, wondering what his grandfather meant. This stress causes Chanyeol to get sick, and he stays in bed. The next day, Yoon-hee goes over, but Seyun tells her that Chanyeol is sick. Kai takes her to sit next to him and says, "I heard you're a fan of mine." Yoon-hee blushes, and Seyun tells her that Kai is the one who heard that. Daeo looks upset and asks, "Why aren't you speaking?" Yoon-hee finally admits, "I like you as my favorite idol, not how you think." When Daeo hears that Kai is her favorite member, he feels even more jealous and tells Kai, "I think it's time for you to go back now." Kai stands up and says to Daeo, "Good luck with your battle. It won't be easy for you, anyway." While Chanyeol dreams of his grandfather, who says, "I will give you a hint about what I mean, a gazelle with a red nose," Chanyeol doesn't understand the hint. He opens his eyes to find Yoon-hee putting compresses on his forehead. Kai steps out and bids farewell to Baekhyun, but before leaving he tells him, "I want you to tell me everything that will happen between Yoon-hee and the two guys who like her." Kai remembers when he spoke to Yoon-hee, telling her she wasn't as smart as he thought. Yoon-hee insists that she is smart and understands everything quickly. However, Kai tells her that when it comes to men, she's clueless because she never understands what's going on around her. The next day, Seyun and Kwang-soo meet again, and the girls who had asked Kwang-soo about EXO before start running after them, screaming Seyun's name. The two hide, and Seyun tells Kwang-soo that if anyone finds out they live here, it will be a problem. Kwang-soo grabs Seyun's hat and starts running, with the girls chasing after him, thinking he's Seyun. Meanwhile, at the house, Yoon-hee is cleaning when she accidentally bumps into Daeo, causing a plate to fall and cut her hand. Daeo helps bandage her wound and asks why she's always reserved with him. Yoon-hee replies, "No, you're actually the person I'm most comfortable talking to." Daeo remembers when Yoon-hee told Kai that he was her favorite idol, so he asks her, "Then, who's your favorite among us four here?" Yoon-hee gets nervous, and Daeo says, "Can it be me?" At that moment, Chanyeol arrives and assumes they're rehearsing a scene. He tells Yoon-hee to go back to her work. Daeo mentions that he's already finished filming the series. As Yoon-hee thinks about what Daeo said, she feels happy that Daeo sees her as a close friend and enjoys talking to her. While Chanyeol is playing his instrument in his room, he remembers seeing Yoon-hee crying when they were kids because another child stole her toy. He had retrieved it for her, and the next day, she returned to him with a drawing she made as a gift. Chanyeol, feeling anxious, wonders, "Does Yoon-hee really not remember me?" As he looks at the drawing he still keeps. Meanwhile, Daeo feels nervous and decides to confess his love to Yoon-hee today. However, Yoon-hee, who's cleaning, also feels uneasy when she hears Chanyeol calling her to come. She goes to Chanyeol's room, where he tells her that his room is full of dust, and he has allergies that have been with him since he was 6. Yoon-hee stands in front of him, confused as he says, "I was wearing a white shirt and a hat when I was 6. Yoon-hee smiles, making him think she remembered, but she replies, "I see, you were a mischievous child." Chanyeol feels shocked by her ignorance, and before she leaves, he approaches her, asking, "You really don't remember who I am?" Yoon-hee returns to her room, thinking about what Daeo might really mean. She wonders, "Everyone is trying to tell me something, but why can't I understand?" She runs to her friend Gon and tells her what happened, but Gon, even more clueless than Yoon-hee, suggests that maybe they want her to join their fan club. Meanwhile, Kwang-soo is with Seyun, who takes one of Kwang-soo's books and finds a photo of him with Yoon-hee and another child. He realizes it's Chanyeol. Seyun takes the photo to Daeo and shows it to him. Daeo says Yoon-hee is very cute, but Seyun tells him to focus. The person in the photo with her is Chanyeol. Back in his room, Chanyeol is struggling to compose a new song with Baekhyun. He asks Baekhyun to find another composer, but Baekhyun firmly refuses and tells him that the only thing he's focused on right now is taking care of Suho, who is in the hospital. Chanyeol tells himself that he must find the necklace. He goes to drink water, only to find Seyun and Daeo staring at him intensely. He yells at them asking, "What do you want?" Meanwhile, Yoon-hee is in her room, dreaming about Daeo's grandfather, who tells her, "Gazelle with a red nose, you need to understand what's going on." She wakes up startled. Chanyeol starts searching the entire house for the necklace and in the process, throws his coat over a hanger, causing a secret door to open. He enters the secret room and finds their old belongings. At the same time, Yoon-hee finds the photo and becomes upset because her brother gave it to the boys. But when she focuses on the picture, she wonders, "Who is this child who was with me?" She begins searching for Chanyeol and finds the secret room's door along with his coat. Thinking he might be cold, she takes the coat and enters, only for the door to close behind them. In the room, Yoon-hee sees the old belongings and says to Chanyeol, "Did you know? I had a friend when I was young. He always played with me using these toys. I really miss him." Chanyeol responds, "I know, he was a beautiful child, 6 years old." Yoon-hee is surprised and asks, "How did you know he was 6? Deo thinks that Yoon-hee will finally figure out what he's hinting at, so he tells her, "What do you think?" She replies, "You're really good at predicting things." Chanyeol is on the verge of losing his patience due to her confusion. He tries to leave, but then realizes the door is locked. He notices the coat in her hand and asks, "Why did you do that?" Yoon-hee responds, "Don't you know how to get out from the inside?" He replies, "No." Chanyeol reaches out his hand, and Yoon-hee places hers in his. He then says, "What are you doing?" "I want your phone." She tells him, "I don't have it with me," and Chanyeol bangs his head against the wall, feeling frustrated by her lack of understanding. He starts shouting loudly, but those outside are either playing video games or sleeping. Chanyeol then places the coat over her to keep her warm but suddenly stands up, saying, "You fool! I've given you so many hints, but you don't understand. I'm Chin, your childhood friend." Yoon-hee is shocked and tells Chanyeol that she can't believe she's seeing him again, and how he's one of the members of her favorite band. Meanwhile, outside, her mother notices her daughter's disappearance, especially since she left her phone behind. The friends also realize that Chanyeol isn't in his room and hasn't been in bed. Back inside, Yoon-hee is sleeping on Chanyeol's shoulder, and he pushes her, saying, "Wake up, you fool. Don't sleep now." Yoon-hee grabs his face happily, saying, "I can't believe I'm seeing you again. Your cheeks were so big when you were little." Outside, everyone is frantically searching for them, thinking that Chanyeol ran away because he couldn't compose the song. Meanwhile, Chanyeol asks Yoon-hee, "Are you really into Kai?" Yoon-hee responds, "No, he's just my favorite idol." Outside, Si-hoon receives a call from Deo, who tells him that he found out from Yoon-hee's house that she's missing. Deo returns home feeling sad, thinking that Yoon-hee and Chanyeol have run away together. However, Baekhyun tells him that this is impossible because they left their phones behind. It's unlikely that they've run away. Meanwhile, Yoon-hee has fallen asleep on Chanyeol's shoulder, but he wakes her up shortly after, saying, "Don't fall asleep and leave me like this. Talk to me a little. I hear a sound outside." Just then, the light goes out, and Yoon-hee nearly falls before Chanyeol catches her. It's then that he notices the necklace hanging around her neck. Outside, Kwang-soo, who is still searching, sees the coat hanger and starts hitting it angrily, frustrated over his sister's disappearance. Suddenly, the door opens, and both Chanyeol and Yoon-hee walk out. The friends reassure Chanyeol, telling him they can't believe what happened. Meanwhile, Deo is upset, knowing that Chanyeol and Yoon-hee spent the night together. Yoon-hee, still in disbelief over everything, wonders to herself why Chanyeol took the necklace. The next day, Yoon-hee goes to clean Deo's room and asks him, "Where's Chin? I want to check on him." Deo asks, "Who's Chin?" And Yoon-hee replies, "It's Chanyeol. I used to call him that when we were little. Didn't he tell you he was my childhood friend?" Meanwhile, Kwang-soo and Si-yoon are in the tent, and Kwang-soo tells Si-yoon that Yoon-hee has found out Chanyeol is indeed her childhood friend. Yoon-hee continues telling Deo about Chanyeol, how he was when he was younger, and how she cried a lot when he left. They had promised each other they would marry when they grew up. Deo asks, "Can you be my friend too?" Yoon-hee replies, "Of course." Later, Chanyeol goes to talk to Yoon-hee, and she starts speaking to him in a more relaxed and friendly way. She asks him, "Why did you take my necklace?" "My grandfather gave it to me when I was crying after you left. He said you'd come back one day to find it." Chanyeol tells her that it will take some time, but he'll return it. Just then, Yoon-hee gets a call from her classmate, but Chanyeol picks up and says, "I'm her boyfriend. Don't call her again." The boy is shocked to hear Chanyeol from EXO answering the phone. Yoon-hee tells Chanyeol, "What are you doing?" He responds, "Stop saying that the boy is your first love because I confessed my love to you when we were kids." Yoon-hee shyly replies, "I don't remember that," but Chanyeol insists, "Let's go on a date tomorrow and you'll remember." Deo, who has been listening to the whole conversation, feels uncomfortable and jealous. But before he can speak up, he gets a call informing him that Suho has gone missing from the hospital. Deo refuses to talk in front of Yoon-hee, but after she leaves, he tells Chanyeol and the others about what happened. He says that Suho has escaped from the hospital and none of the members know where he is. Meanwhile, Suho is sitting by the beach, remembering how his manager told the doctor to keep his condition a secret from him so that he wouldn't get upset, making him think he wouldn't walk again. That's why he ran away from the hospital. Yoon-hee is getting ready for her date with Chanyeol, wondering where they should go together. Meanwhile, the guys are preparing to search for Suho. Si-yoon is upset because Suho hasn't called them, and Deo says that Suho did call him and he could tell from his voice that Suho was sad, but he didn't want to ask what was wrong to avoid making him feel worse. We then see Suho heading to the training studio where they used to dance. The guys begin searching for Suho everywhere, and Chanyeol accidentally leaves his phone in the car. At the same time, Yoonhee sends him a message saying she wants to meet him at the field where they used to meet as children. The boys return home exhausted and blame themselves for not taking better care of their friend. However, as the morning comes, they all go to the training center where they find him trying to practice. Chanyeol asks, "Why did you do that? You worried us." Suho apologizes and says he's ready to leave the group so that the team won't be delayed again. But Chanyeol replies that he got hurt because of him and won't abandon him. Suho calls him a fool and tells him to forget about the bad luck. The rest of the members enter and contact the rest of the team to reassure them about Suho. The guys return and fall asleep in the car from exhaustion, but Daeo spots Yoonhee and rushes toward her. The scene then shifts to Chanyeol, who wakes up and runs to where Yoonhee is. Chanyeol deeply apologizes, asking if he made Yoonhee wait too long. Yoonhee reassures him that he didn't, and she was willing to wait even longer. Meanwhile, Daeo sits and recalls what Yoonhee had told him when he went to see her. She mentioned that she was waiting for Chanyeol, and even when Daeo told her that Chanyeol was asleep at home, she insisted she would wait because she truly wanted the date. Daeo remembers how he returned home and told Chanyeol that Yoonhee was waiting for him, wishing he didn't have to do it. But he decided not to be selfish in his love because he knew that Yoonhee loved Chanyeol and that wouldn't change. Yoonhee returns home, still in disbelief that she is officially dating her childhood friend, who is also a member of EXO. The next day, the members learn that they will resume work partially after Suho's condition improves slightly and that they need to return to the capital. Chanyeol watches Yoonhee cleaning and thinks to himself, "I'm sorry I wasted time waiting for you to remember me, but I promise I will return, and I will make it up to you." The next morning, the boys prepare to leave, and Seyun wants to wake Kwang-soo to say goodbye, but Chanyeol refuses so that he doesn't make Yoonhee sad by telling her. However, as they get into the car, Seyun hears Kwang-soo shouting for them to stop. The car halts, and Kwang-soo hugs Seyun, giving him some coffee he had ground specially for him, saying goodbye warmly. Meanwhile, Yoonhee goes to the boys' house in the morning but finds it empty. When she enters Chanyeol's room, she discovers he left her the guitar Matilda, the necklace, the song he composed, and a message promising he would return. Yoonhee listens to the song with joy, wishing for his return soon. A year passes, and Yoonhee waits for even a single message from Chanyeol, but none comes. Then, one day, her mother tells her that someone has rented the house next door, and she has to go clean it. When Yoonhee arrives, she finds a box of sweets. She's about to eat from it but looks up to see the members of EXO standing at the door, with Chanyeol gazing at her lovingly. And so, our drama ends. Let me know in the comments which EXO song is your favorite. I'll see you in the next recap.